I'm someone who's always loved writing cards and letters, whether it was making those handwritten Diwali cards for family in school or graduating to writing these full fledged letters and postcards to loved ones. So I thoroughly enjoyed the process of putting pen to paper. And to this day, I write postcards and letters to friends because I feel nothing beats a handwritten card, and a WhatsApp message isn't even in the running. So, with time, I understood that postcards and letters also taught me the importance of brevity because you only have a finite amount of space to convey your thoughts, and you realize that you have to keep it classy and concise, which is a simple mantra that I follow even now. And my appreciation for the written word has a lot to do with my love for language and the joy that literature has brought me. I found the ability of a writer to create a universe that one could live and breathe in was such a fascinating and powerful prospect. So, according to me, this is what makes the world go round, storytelling. Because in whatever form, it is what we do. Because be it the stories we heard from, our grandmothers, in my case, my grandmother talking about her childhood during the partition, or the stories that I told my mom about why I couldn't ace the mental math test, our entire existence is a story. And I firmly believe we're all storytellers. But for me, it is more than that. I tell stories for a living. Stories based on facts, but stories all the same. I work as a reporter for a business paper, and while the general notion is that business is boring and just numbers, facts, and figures, I'm guilty of thinking that as well. It is so much more than that because you're telling stories of the people behind these enterprises, their lives, their ambitions and motivations, their triumphs and downfalls, the legacy that they leave behind, and the lives that they impact. So, writing is more to me than just work. It is a delightful way to express myself, as I've realized with a couple of the humorous pieces that I've attempted. My work doesn't really permit me to talk about how Khilji should have been taught table manners. So I found that blogging was a good way to channel that filminess that I had suppressed. And I haven't been active on the blogging front, but I do hope to get back to writing humor because God knows the world could do with some laughs.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Diya Rekhi. Diya is a journalist and she currently works with a leading business daily and covers business, tech, and political developments in Tamil Nadu. She has also been dabbling in formats like news based podcasts and even started a small lockdown experiment called What Drives You Kuku. This is a two-part conversation. On this episode, which is part 1, we'll be talking about Diya's life as a journalist and how she got into it. She will also be sharing stories of covering news during the pandemic and the Tamil Nadu elections. Diya will also be talking about her days as a crime journalist and will be sharing anecdotes from there as well. Please note that this episode contains disturbing content. So, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. Today's episode, we have Diya Rekhi. Welcome to the show, Diya. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
So, I know you've been writing for a while, and it's something you've really enjoyed. Um, when did you realize that writing was something you really liked doing? And then, when did you make the decision to kind of go into journalism and sort of make it a part of your profession?
So I can't really put a finger on exactly when I started getting into writing in that sense, but I do feel like it could have been, some of those essays get written in English or Hindi period in school. Always when you come back from your summer vacation, the first one you write is, how you spent your summer vacation. Or in Hindi class, it would be, Mera Desh or Meri Ma or something like that.
Yeah.
And I won't lie, okay, I live for those essays, and I think you can like attest to this because every exam when there was an essay question, I never finished the exam because I got so invested in writing these stories about me, Mera Desh and Meri Ma and all of that. I never finished the exam only. So for those 10 marks, I would let go of 20 marks. It was like that. So I just always, really enjoyed writing in that sense. And as for when I started to think of it professionally, I think that came much later. As a child, obviously, like, you feel like, oh my God, this is so cool. This job is so cool. I want to be on TV. But
Right.
I mean, and who doesn't want to be cool, right? Like when you're
Yeah.
a young person, like everyone wants to be like doing these daredevilish things and going out on the field and reporting and all of that. But I think with time, it became more about me wanting to change the world. I
Right.
think you keep hearing this whole pen is mighty, the pen is mightier than the sword sort of narrative. And
Right.
I kept hearing it and I believed it also. And I said, I can beat anybody with a sword. Practically, it's probably not the case. But I
Yeah.
think part of the reason why I do what I do is because I do believe in the power of the written word.
Right.
So yeah, I think the final call came when I was in college. So I was
Right.
doing my undergrad in sociology, and there was this elective, which was essentially a journalistic writing elective. So I took that up. I think for a couple of months. It was maybe one semester or something like that, and I fell in love with the whole process of talking to people, writing their stories, putting out and designing this newsletter sort of thing. It was great fun. So I think that sort of was the final push before I took that deep dive into journalism. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, no, that's amazing. And yeah, and journalism is a very um it's a very interesting profession, because you're essentially, though you are working with facts, you're essentially even storytelling through facts, which is something you mentioned in your intro part. But, just coming to news, what was covering, news in the pandemic like? Because it was, I mean, there was so many restrictions, and I'm sure there were a lot of challenges for everyone, but especially for journalism, because where you essentially still need to kind of put information out there, make sure people are kind of aware of what was happening in the outside world. So what was that like for you?
So I won't, give you this impression that it was easy because it wasn't. But I had it a lot easier than a lot of other journalists because I cover business for the most part. So
Okay.
for me, a lot of people just very swiftly moved to virtual events. So I didn't really need to step out as such.
Okay.
At least last year, I didn't step out much at all. There were people who were out on the field. They were the ones bringing you the news, and I feel I tip my hat to them because it must not have been easy at all. What
Mm.
was tough, I think, was through that period, also remotely working is not simple because I did have to do impact stories because businesses were also shut, people were impacted, livelihoods were impacted, and getting people to talk through that period was also hard because you have to do everything remotely. Suddenly
Right.
I was given this entirely new beat to cover, which is this virus, and I'm
Mm.
not a health reporter, so I didn't really have too many contacts who were doctors and so on. So starting from scratch and building those sources was a bit of a challenge, and it's much harder when you have to call a source for the first time. They don't know
Right.
who you are, they're dealing with a pandemic, and you're just calling them and being like, hello, sir, hello, ma'am, can you please tell me this? And they're just like, can you shut up? Because we have better things to do, right?
True, true.
So, and I understand that. And it's easier when you've developed a bond and a relationship with somebody to kind of call them and get news and information. But starting from scratch in that sense was hard. And suddenly the workload also had really tripled, I would say, through
Yeah,
that period.
yeah,
So
I
I
can.
think 2020 went pretty much in trying to understand what was going on. Like nobody knew. And
True.
I think that is pretty much how it went, 2020. 2021 was quite a year, I think, because we had elections in Tamil Nadu, and that
Mm.
was around March that, campaigning was at its peak.
Right.
So I got on the road and visited quite a few places where key rallies were being held, or important constituencies that needed to be covered. And that
Okay.
was my first time covering an election. So covering an election for the first time is one thing. Covering an election during a pandemic is a whole different thing, because it just spells trouble, if you ask me, because there's huge rallies. And I remember we had gone to Darapuram, all right, and that was where the prime minister was having this huge rally, like massive. You can't even imagine. It was like a sea of people, in support of the AIADMK. And he had come on his, like, I mean, he had come down on. I remember going there and thinking there is no way in hell I'm coming out without COVID, because it was just so many people, no adhering of social distancing, no mask, nothing. And in the heat, I was just like, I'm going to faint. I don't have anybody to help me here, because my driver had dropped me at the venue, and
Okay.
he had to go further off to kind of get parking, right?
Okay.
And I had not eaten anything that morning because he needed to make it in time.
Right.
And oh my god, the number of people there, I I don't know how they managed to. I'm sure most of the second wave that we had might have been from Dharapuram only, because I saw that crowd and I said, this is just death. I am not coming out of this alive. But I think it was because maybe I took my first shot right before going reporting. That I am convinced that's the only thing that could have helped me, because if you saw the number of people there and the, like, I'm getting nightmares thinking about it also. But yeah, so either it was the vaccine or it was God. It's one of the two.
Or it was a combination
That
of the
was,
two.
or it was a combination of the two. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so I think that was really an experience. I got the chance to interview Kamal Hassan for like a
Nice.
grand total of 12 minutes. And I
Oh,
traveled
wow.
all the way to Coimbatore to see him for that. But
Damn.
it was really special. I think as an interview, it was one of my big ticket interviews, because everyone was like, what does he have to say, kind of thing. So I met him in this hotel in Coimbatore, this Taj, I think it was. Yeah, it was Taj. And he was so busy, but I managed to sneak in about 10 minutes. And before this was sort of finalized, I got a call from somebody who I'd been asking for an interview for TTV Dinakaran
Okay.
for a very long time. And I was in Coimbatore and I got a call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon saying TTV is in Pollachi. And
Oh,
Pollachi is just about a 1 hour drive. Okay.
right.
And they call me at 1 o'clock and tell me you have till 2 o'clock. If you catch him by 2 o'clock, yeah, if you catch him by 2 o'clock, he'll give you an interview. I said, you're telling me this at freaking 1 o'clock. Like, what do you expect me to do? So they said,
Fly.
madam, either you fly and go and meet him at 2, or you're not going to get that interview. So, I mean, yeah, so I've had the same driver since I was in school, and Sangeeta would know him. I looked at Gopi and I said, Gopi, he's there till 2 o'clock.
Oh,
Polama. And Gopi is like fully charged and he's like, let's do this. So
oh my God.
we went in some kind of road rash sort of situation where we zipped through the streets till Pollachi. We reached, I think, at around 2 o'clock only.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were very lucky because as soon as we entered Pollachi, we didn't know where he was, right? They just told us he's in the local BJP leader's house. How the hell are you supposed to find a local BJP leader's house when you have no idea?
Oh
So
my
we
God.
stopped, and as soon as you enter Pollachi, there was this petrol bunk. And we
Mm.
asked the people at the petrol bunk. In smaller towns, I feel everybody knows everybody, and this is a BJP local leader or whatever. So we said, where is this guy's house? So he
Okay.
said, oh, it's close by only. So we were very lucky, and we ended up, going through these by lanes and found this beautiful house, okay,
Okay.
like stunning Kerala style, beautiful house. And we knew he was there only because there were all these big banners of TTV Dinakar, and we were like, okay, we found the right place. And biryanis were being distributed and all of that. So I said, okay, this is the right place. And
Right.
we managed to make it by like 2:05, and I was told he was going to go up and sleep. So they said you have to wait till he finishes his test and then he'll come down and meet you. So he did finally meet me for like 15 minutes. So that was also pretty interesting. I met Kanimozhi while I was
Oh, wow.
Karekudi. Yeah, that also was a story. I'm boasting about not falling sick after that rally. I did fall sick after the rally because
Okay.
I came back. I think after Darapuram, we went to Karaikudi.
Hmm.
And Karaikudi was where she was, Kanimuri was. And
Okay.
I reached there and I ate something at the restaurant. There's no Swiggy and all of that that works at like late or anything. So we
Right.
reached very late there. So I ate in the restaurant and I don't know in Karaikudi why they were serving me Malaysian food. There was only Malaysian food in that restaurant, like in the hotel restaurant. I was like, why are you giving Malaysian food? But
In
there was nothing else which
Karakudi.
was open. In Karaikudi, I'm eating some. I remember calling a friend of mine and I'm like, Shania, what is this mee goreng and all? Because I'd never eaten it. So she was just like, just eat it, it's fine. And I had some chicken thing. And the whole night I was running to the bathroom. So I was like, this is terrible. The whole night, Sangeeta, I was just going from my bed to the bathroom and back. And I had this interview at 10 in the morning.
Oh my
And
God.
I said, can I make it for this interview? Because all I'm doing is running to the bathroom. So I knew if I didn't go, then it would tank, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't see her. And she's
Hmm.
also a big leader, right? So
Right.
getting her interview was a fairly big thing for me.
Definitely.
So I remember I woke up in the morning and I said, okay, I'll attempt this. So Gopi came and I said, Gopi, please drive slowly. Like my stomach is really hurting. If you're going to be like driving fast, I'm going to. So he said, yeah, okay. But oh my God, those roads, Sangeeta, I was just holding my stomach the whole time
Oh
because
my
there were
God.
just so many potholes,
Oh,
so
damn.
many potholes. And we reached this, plush, beautiful, hotel that she was staying at. And I was waiting outside like this bikari because I couldn't, I wouldn't go in. And we were waiting for our turn. There were two other journalists. And I was just like, I really need to use the loo, but I
Oh my
can't go
God.
because if I go to the loo, then she's just going to like finish whatever interviews she has and go off
Yeah.
to her next place. So
Hmm.
I just sat there, waited, and finally she came and like she gave me a few minutes and I went back to the hotel and was only having Gelusil after that because
My
I
God.
could not handle it. Yeah, I just it was bad.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Wow. What
So that
a.
was yeah, quite a ride. Yeah. I
Yeah.
did visit places like, Madurai and Ramanathapuram also to do things that we call mood copies. So
Okay.
those are basically features where you tell people what features, where you tell people what, people are feeling. So in this context, it was who they were going to vote for and why they were looking to vote for whoever. So yeah, it was risky for sure, traveling and doing all of this during a pandemic. But I think overall it was something that it will.
Yeah, that's, oh my God, this is insane. I mean, you should totally like write a story or book or something about this experience because man, that's insane that you got to like experience so much in these past like 1.5, 2 years. It's
Yeah, I
really,
think the second wave was really bad though. But yeah, absolutely.
yeah, no, it's mad, man. It's mad for sure. Um, but I also know you were briefly a crime journalist, which is, I don't even know where to start this question from because, I feel like when you say crime journalism, people are possibly like picturing like Sherlock Holmes or something, but that's not the reality, honestly. I don't think people understand like what crime journalists really do. How did that happen for you? And what was your experience of covering crime? Because I know you did it briefly, but what was it like?
So I've actually done many things through my career as a reporter. I started off with covering stock markets. I've covered courts. I've covered politics, business, technology. So a lot of things. And I just feel like you give me anything now and I can write about it, which is beautiful and challenging. Because there are certain things which are very technical. I'm currently writing a lot about deep tech, and I'm not someone with a great science background or anything. So it does require a lot of understanding and, kind of figuring out what I'm even writing about half the time. Crime was just one of those things that I always wanted to cover because I have this unhealthy obsession with reading about crime and the mafia and stuff like that. So, and I pretty much live for good documentaries and crime thrillers. At one point, I remember my mom was so concerned about it. She was like, "Why are you only reading this kind of stuff? Like, what is this dark, boring stuff that you're reading?" But I think I got a chance to cover crime in my previous organization because someone had quit, and I kind of really jumped at it. There was a vacancy, and that's generally how things work anyway. When there's a vacancy in a certain beat, either you shift, or if you're willing to shift, that is, or they get somebody new. In my case, I was like, yeah, I'm totally like down to doing this, but it's a very demanding beat. It isn't as glamorous as people show in the movies and stuff like that. In fact, journalism in general is just, in my opinion, never fully portrayed very well in films. Also because, like, you have certain films which portray journalism in, like, you see a spotlight, right? It's very inspirational. It's an amazing story to tell, but that's one story. I keep telling people that's one story that they broke. On a daily basis, we have to put out so many, especially if you work with a newspaper, right? You have to keep putting out stuff. So a lot of it is a lot of mundane stuff also. It's not always that you're going to get a spotlight kind of story every day. It doesn't happen. There are certain stories which stick with you, and they're really impactful and those kinds of things, but for the most part you're doing like random stuff. I remember when I was in my previous organization, I was doing like exhibitions and all so often. I To this day I can write a piece about exhibitions with my eyes closed,
Wow.
because yeah, because it was like pretty much the same thing that would happen at the same venue, and it would just be a different set of people, at the
Okay.
same venue. So if the sari, how much can you write about saris? Like, I just feel like it's quite
So look
limited
at
for
the
my,
Kanjivaram, the Banarasi border.
yeah, yeah. So it was pretty much that. When it came to crime, I felt like I found that I was getting very emotionally invested in the stories I was writing because,
Right.
there were there were stories of abuse, there were accidents, there were suicides. Those are not easy to do. I found writing, or rather, visiting families after a death particularly hard. Because I think you just feel helpless because they come up to you and they think you are going to solve their problem, and that's not really the case. I can't guarantee anything. They keep thinking that you will get us the compensation, you will do this, like whatever they're eligible for from the government and so on. But it doesn't work that way, and if only it did, but it really doesn't. And at that point I feel like, yeah. And there were also these really horrific cases. This man who was drunk, and he kind of flung his 6-month-old baby to the wall, and her skull cracked, and she passed away. And what was this for? It was because he wanted a boy. So I think that really sent shivers down my spine, because you hear of these things as one thing, and people say, oh, India is progressing towards a better kind of situation in terms of women empowerment and all of that. But are we really, those are instances that you really sit back and you reassess, where you're like, I'm talking about all of this. I'm able to do this job, but that is because of the mighty privilege that I come with, you know, of being born into a certain family, of having access to a certain kind of education, and so on. So I think that instance really shook me up quite a bit. And there were so many others, like I remember there was this story of these three from Chennai who had gone on an educational trip to Pune.
Okay.
And they were essentially three kids who had been selected as being the top of their class. And
Right.
it was like a larger thing which was organized in collaboration with the like a big organization. And
Hmm.
they went to Pune and they had gone into this like not really a that talab kind of thing, right? Like a lake kind of thing, and they had gone in and they drowned. So these three kids drowned, and the teachers weren't able to help them and so on. Those bodies came back, and these I was sent to kind of cover the deaths, and I really was so upset with that story because I remember meeting, the parents and, these mothers just holding me and howling, saying, "Bring my son back, bring my son back." And I, it was really bad because, you can't, I'm not God, I don't even think God can bring anybody back at this point. And these children were the hope for these parents in a sense because their parents were mainly from the fishermen community, and the parents were so keen on educating their children to give them a better life. I do feel like that was another instance. And it kind of also made my blood boil because there was a certain organization that was involved, which was not named at all by the Pune media. And these parents were talking about it. And, it completely felt like something which was much more than what was meeting the eye in that sense. So
Yeah.
that was another story. Yeah, no, I that was another like eerie as hell incident because there was this news that broke about this girl who had died by suicide. That's the correct usage. So I shall use that. She had died by suicide a few months before that this came out. So I think she had died, and after that, her parents had gone to the Mylapore crematorium to bury her. And as is done quite often, like they laid her body in the pit, and you put a little bit of mud on top to kind of signify that, she's going to be buried. And then the rest is done by the workers. What her parents didn't realize was that the workers there were had teamed up with some, I don't know, Babaji kind of thing in Trichy or something like that, and they smuggled the body. In the sense, they put it in a van and took her body to Trichy. And many months later, her body was found in a house because the neighbors complained that there was this horrible smell. I mean, it's a dead body, it is going to smell, right? And I think a month or a month and a half later, the neighbors complained that there's a smell coming from this house. So the police barged in and found that there was this man who was doing some voodoo stuff, and this girl's body, it was full of turmeric and red chili powder. I don't even know what all they put, and they brought the body back. And my editor told me that go and speak to the parents. Now
Right.
this is the what I told you, I hate deaths. And then I
Yeah.
had to like find her house, and it was like, I mean, for purposes of not revealing identity, like it was in the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went and found her house, which was also very tough because you only have a basic idea of where it is. Girl, so I asked the police, and they gave me an idea of where exactly she stays.
Right.
And I went to that colony, and again, it's a very close knit colony because all the houses are so close together. So I
Right.
asked somebody, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, that girl, she's in that house, or other her parents are in that house." So I went there and I knocked on the door because the doorbell wasn't ringing, and someone came to the door, and I said, "I'm from the media, and we're looking to write about this, and would you be willing to talk?" And I didn't even get an answer. I just got the door slammed in my face, and I have no problem with it. I think she was completely in the right to do that. So I called my editor and I said, "See, they're not talking." And that was expected. Very few people, there are people also who talk, by the way. There are people who want to talk and who say, "This is terrible and we want this to be changed." But she wasn't one of those people. So I said, I don't know if it was the mother or some relative, but I told her who I am, and she slammed the door in my face. So this is a no go. Like, I can't keep like pestering and being like, tell me, tell me, tell me. No. She said, no, I'm not going to do anything. So he said, no, fair enough, that's fine. Now I want you to go and find out how easy it is to smuggle a body. I said,
My
what?
God.
What is this brief? So he said, no, no, you visit different crematoriums and see what the security and all is like. So I said, okay, fine. Like, I'll go back there. And this was when this issue was just pretty hot, okay? Like, in the sense that this had just happened that day. So everyone was on, on guard and high alert. So I went in a cab, and at the gate, the watchman kind of asked, but we didn't roll the window down. I just pointed towards the crematorium, and he said, okay, go. And we went, and the cab dropped me, and he left. And I was waiting there, and it was like some scene from some movie. There was this, funeral pyre, and someone was chanting, and above me,
Oh,
I could see all of
damn.
these crows, and I'm sitting alone and texting my friend and being like, I'm really freaked out right now.
It's a
Okay,
scene from a
fine.
horror movie.
It was really like, except it was in broad daylight, thankfully. I mean, I wouldn't have
God.
gone at night. So then I think nobody was coming, whoever the priest and all was busy. I went, I think at the back there was an office. So I went to the office and I said, I'm from the media and we wanted to know a little bit more about this case. And he was like, no, 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 I'm not talking, no media, this, that, and all. I said, okay, fine, I'll go. Then when I'm walking, I didn't have a cab and I didn't have transport naturally. So I was going to get an auto. At the gate, I see this huge crowd of men, okay, led by the security guard. And he's just like, why didn't you tell me? Yenama solave illa. And I said, sir, நீங்க கேட்கவே இல்ல, which basically means, you didn't ask me, so I didn't tell you. Because I think he must have gotten into trouble saying, what the hell, you let the media in, we told you not to, and all of that. So he said, you didn't tell me, and all of that. And they came and like surrounded me, okay? So I really got freaked out. I was like, oh God, this is going to be a problem. But then I think they were like, okay, fine. I said, nothing happened. I went, said something, and came back. That's all. So I got in an auto and I went to like 2, 3 other crematoriums. And yeah, I've
People go
realized
bar
like,
hopping, you went crematorium hopping. Oh
yeah,
my
no,
God.
yeah, it's pretty simple to smuggle a body in Chennai if anybody is into smuggling bodies.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh my
yeah, I
God.
know that was quite something. I
Yeah,
remember I came back home and my mom was just like, "What is this job you're doing? Like, what is this? Why are you going to crematorium?"
oh my
I was
God.
like, "Yeah,
Yeah, and Indian parents, you know how they can get really like worked up and
yeah."
overprotective sometimes. So I can imagine how your mom must have been like, Dia, what is this? What are you doing?
Oh, it
Where are you
was
going?
so creepy, Sangeeta. I remember I went to Koturpuram crematorium. There was nobody there except one guy who's playing cricket in the crematorium. I was like, "Why are you playing there? Can't you find any other place to play cricket?"
Was it a ghost or was it a real person? We'll never know.
Don't ask me this question. I really don't know. Oh God.
Oh my God. But
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, right? I guess like when you cover like stories like this, it's almost like you don't even have to rely on like horror stories because you have real life horror stories like this. And it's so disturbing where
Yeah, for
you
sure.
wouldn't think it's real, but then it is a reality. And then you're constantly faced with that, which kind of brings me to my next question. When you're faced with like news like this and you have to cover, like you have to go visit families who've suffered loss and have grief and such disturbing instances, what does it do to your mental health and how do you cope? And I'm not just saying, even of course the crime stories are one part of it, but I'm sure even during the pandemic you must have had your own struggles, right, with news and the like. So I'm just wondering, how do you deal with it on a mental health basis?
It's hard. I'm not going to lie. I think the second wave in particular was very, very tough, Sangeeta, because it's not just the stories that you're doing, right? I was getting calls, and I'm not lying. I would get calls at 2 in the morning sometimes from colleagues who have people in the state, in Tamil Nadu, asking for help to get oxygen beds, or even oxygen at that point. And I it was really, really horrible because on one hand you're reporting about it, and again you're reporting remotely because at the peak of the second wave nobody wanted to take that chance if you could help it, to go there and either expose yourself or like add to somebody else's woes. And I was just calling people, cold calling which is again a normal term for when you just pick up the call, I mean, the phone and call somebody. You dial somebody and see if it kind of goes through or whatever. So I was just cold calling people from Twitter to kind of find out what they were experiencing, whether they had got oxygen, whether they had got a bed, whatever. And I had people crying on the phone, begging me to help them get an oxygen bed. And I was also volunteering at that point with an organization to help with providing people with information on beds, verifying, and so on. So it was very tough. And because you're writing real stories, right, about real living, breathing people. So you're bound to be affected. And you're also writing it with the intent to convey a particular emotion. Now, if there is doom and gloom outside, what is the point of me painting rainbows and unicorns for the reader? That's not me doing my job then.
That's
And
true.
the second wave was doom and gloom for sure. And
Right.
I really hope we don't have anything as disastrous as that again. Like
Right.
the kind of death and despair that we've seen, I really hope that doesn't happen to mankind again, because it was really horrible. And as for what I do to cope with it, I think it's been a couple of years now. So I wouldn't
Right.
say it doesn't affect me, because if I truly believe, Sangeeta, that if you're doing something and it doesn't affect you at all, there's a problem. You
Right.
know,
Right.
you should be affected, especially in this profession. You should be affected by what you see. Should
Right.
you be affected to the point that you are not able to function?
Right.
No, that's where you draw the line.
Okay.
So for me, I feel like it did affect me, and it does affect me in terms of my mental health. But I found ways to kind of cope with it, in the sense that I tend to distract myself. I watch
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
I watch something. I spend time with my dog, who
Okay.
is, I mean, whether or not the world is burning, his priorities are simple: sleep, eat, walk. In between, he has to have his walk and all of that. So I feel like you spend time with people who matter, and I think discuss other things apart from the world burning outside, in a sense.
Yeah.
And that could, termed as being silly, maybe. But I think when you're constantly writing about the world burning outside,
Yeah.
it helps to, sit back and discuss something, which is why, or even calling a friend. I think,
Yeah.
speaking to you, we would always spend a little time on, oh my God, like, I don't know when we'll meet or when we'll get the chance again and all of that,
Yeah.
especially in 2020. But
Exactly.
I think beyond that, there's still a certain underlying layer of hope that,
Right.
this is going to get better and we are going to get a chance to meet soon. And, then you talk about random silly shit, like which movie have you seen, or which serial are you watching, or which actor is being idiotic, So those kinds of things help.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've lost track of the number of times people have broken down on the phone through the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Hmm.
But I am happy to report that it is better now. So I
Yeah.
think I'm hoping, and I've got my fingers crossed about this, I'm hoping things are looking up for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. And I think things are, slowly improving. I think also because now the vaccinations have increased, people are going out getting vaccinated. So that's something. And of course, for whoever has recovered from COVID, I think their immunity is also like better naturally and whatnot. And yeah, hopefully we are moving to better days, fingers crossed. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, I think you beautifully also segued into my next section because we're going to keep it a little light now since we discussed so many heavy things. We're going to talk about Bollywood now because I know you're a big Bollywood buff. So am I. And I remember whenever like any new Hindi film would come out, like both of us would chat about, oh my God, like, have you seen the trailer? This,
Most exciting thing to do during math class, especially.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah.
These were the conversations in yeah, exactly, in math class for sure. But I know during like lockdown you started conducting these Bollywood quizzes, which were really fun because I've attended a couple of them. They're really fun. And the other thing you started doing is you even started raising funds through them for people who were affected by the pandemic in like different ways. So what has that been like, just, starting these quizzes and then kind of using them in a way for a good cause?
Yeah, so I live and breathe Bollywood, and I'm sure you can vouch for that. Through the lockdown, you asked about my coping strategies, right?
Right.
And I think this was a way to cope, you know, because people were sad and bored through the first lockdown, at least, because nobody knew what was going on. And almost as a coping mechanism of sorts, I said, I'm going to do something for fun. I'm doing a lot about, like, despair during COVID. Let me do something in a small way to not just cheer myself up, but hopefully bring a smile to a couple of more people's faces. And I started this page at that point called What Drives You Kuku. And it is a very confused page, let me tell you, because it started off with some random, clips that I had put out in terms of, like, I don't know if this is like, I don't know how to explain it, but essentially, like, it would be one music video with a completely unrelated sound clip. You know, it was one of those. Like, so you would have Badshah's "Ye Ladki Pagal Hai Pagal Hai" video with, like, Maeri. So I was doing, like, random stuff like that. So it started off that way, and then one day I had, taken part in this Bollywood quiz that was organized by somebody else. It just came up as something that was suggested online. I took part in it, and it was a very simple quiz, okay? Like, it was very lame. And I took part in it with my mom, and my mom, like, the few questions that she answered also she got wrong. So I was just like, this quiz is really simple and I can do a better job of this. I felt. Okay.
Hmm.
So I was like, why don't I do my own quiz? So it was just a fun thing that I started off, and people enjoyed it. I mean, the few
Right.
people who were on that page and friends and stuff who took part enjoyed it. So I was like, okay, what more can I do? Because
Right.
I got a call from somebody I had written a story about. And this was this lady auto driver in Chennai who's a
Hmm.
single mother. And I
Okay.
had written a story about her many years ago. And
Right.
she called me through the lockdown where nothing was functioning.
Right.
She called me and she said, I'm in a lot of trouble. Can you please help me out? Because my lease is going to end soon.
Okay.
And if my lease ends, I'm not going to have a house for my children and myself because I can't go back to my husband. Her husband was abusive.
Okay.
And she was like, I don't have money for my lease, and my
Hmm.
children have had to drop out of school.
Right.
So I had no expectations. I just told her I will try my best to help you, but please don't count on me because
Right.
I really don't know. You can't vouch for other people's
Exactly.
funds, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. I've got this call and I'd like to help. So I'm going to do this quiz and raise money for it. And I made it a completely voluntary thing. Even if
Right.
someone didn't want to take part in the quiz, they could contribute how much ever they wanted,
Exactly.
whether it was 10 rupees or 1,000 rupees or 10,000 or whatever it was. And I don't know, maybe it was just the stars aligning. People really resonated with her story. And forget taking part in the quiz, which was part of it. They really shared that message with so many people. And I was expecting maybe, like, we'd be able to raise 10K. I was hoping to raise 10K. We raised close to 70,000, Sangeeta, for
That's
that quiz.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it took care of her lease amount. It also helped to put her son back in school. So
Yeah.
I think that was a big win for everybody who took part, whether
Definitely.
it was for the quiz or not. And we've done subsequent versions of this whole quiz for a cause thing that I do on my page from time to time.
Right.
We've managed to raise funds for another boy who was my brother's classmate in college,
Okay.
who lost his father to COVID and was down with COVID himself. And his
Okay.
father was the only earning member, the breadwinner of the family.
Right.
And this boy was supposed to go to study abroad, but had to kind of cancel his plans because now his mother needed help. And we were in a bad situation because of the amount of money they'd spent on COVID and so on. So there was people helped with that. And, people also helped with another friend's organization to that helps children with cerebral palsy. So I
Okay.
think it's been quite a fulfilling venture in that sense. If not for anything else, something that started out as a fun thing has managed to help a few people, and I think that's something I'm very happy and proud of, because
And you should be. That's, it's incredibly, it's just incredible that you've managed, to do this. And I think it also goes to show, as much as, and I know maybe this sounds very idealistic and naive of me to say, but as much as bad there is in the world, there is some amount of goodness to kind of counter it.
100%, because I couldn't have done this on my own. It is a lot of generous souls, including yourself, who've put their money towards helping other people through this really, really tough time. And I mean, I'm no Sonu Sood, but in my own way, I was like, okay, these are people who are reaching out for a little bit of help. And in whatever capacity I can, if I can help somebody, it would make my day as well as everyone else's.
Definitely.
Because I received so many messages after, especially the first quiz for a cause for the auto driver Subhashini, where people were like, we'd like to help her out more and we'd like to do more. It was really heartening to see that, when push comes to shove, we can help each other if we want to.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And, hopefully that spirit continues and hopefully more goodness comes out in the world and we all kind of help each other, lift each other up, and we all kind of progress together. Because I think that's the ultimate dream, right? All of us moving ahead together. I know that's easier said than done, and that's really like a bubble dream right now, but hopefully we'll get there someday.
I won't diss you on that because I got into journalism to change the world. So I mean, that sounds really ridiculous and naive to me at this point, because like I've worked 7 years, but I feel like some of that idealism always remains, and it should, because what is the point of thinking that there is no point left in doing something?
That's true.
Then you just stop trying. That's just bad. Yeah.
For sure. Baby steps. We will hopefully get there someday.
So that was part 1 of my conversation with Diya Rekhi. That was truly an intense discussion, and it's definitely going to take me a bit to let it all sink in. You can tune in to part 2 of my conversation with Diya for some lighter content on Bollywood, OTT platforms, her future plans, and a lesson she'll never forget. Talk soon.